Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com not only covers the league, but is also an attorney, so is very well situated to digest this for us. So, Mike, digest it. What's your takeaway here?
Well, it's a great disconnect between all the things that people have said publicly about Michael Sam and then the things that really happen inside an NFL locker room. And that's why there have been so many questions and concerns this week about whether or not an NFL locker room is ready for this. Because at some point back in the 50s or 60s, the rest of the world developed and evolved, and every other workplace modernized. The locker room has continued to be the way it is, and whether that's because we give the players a pass or we underestimate their ability to behave the way everyone else behaves in every other workplace, from coal mines to steel mills to army barracks, whatever the case may be, we expect other people in other lines of work in situations like this to behave better than we expect NFL players and coaches to behave. And this is going to be the point, especially with Michael Sam's declaration this week. I think this is going to be the point where the NFL institutes sweeping changes and really increases the expectations about how people are going to treat each other.
I mean, we could never know as journalists what happens inside of a locker room when we are not there. But based on what you're reading in this report, you've obviously been in a lot of NFL locker rooms. Do you think this is typical of an NFL locker room environment, or is this kind of some nasty aberration in your view?
I think it's typical to the extent that plenty of teams have had a Richie Incognito in that locker room over the years. And there's a lot of stuff that gets said among guys who aren't offended by it. The problem is you put people in there who are offended, and look, if it wasn't for Jonathan Martin, we would have never known about any of this other stuff. So in how many other locker rooms are there inappropriate comments made by these overgrown kids who have never really been held accountable to act like responsible adults? They've had excuses made for them because they're good athletes their entire lives, from the time that they're 8 years old and they first show a high degree of ability. We look the other way. That's just Richie being Richie, and it's all in good fun, and there's nothing malicious, and the next thing you know, you have a 20-something-year-old man that doesn't know how to behave. And I think that's part of the problem, that there are guys like that. Is it the majority? No. But there are guys like that, and it took a situation where you had a Jonathan Martin who had a very real reaction and did something about it, and that's the only way we know about it. If he hadn't had that reaction, we never would have known. And my sense is Richie Incognito has always been this way from the time he was in high school, and that there are other guys just like him. And now the question is, what does the NFL do about it going forward?
Next question, Mike, is how high up the food chain in the Miami Dolphins organization is this going to go? I mentioned the offensive line coach, Jim Turner. He's in a lot of hot water on this one. It's going to be hard to imagine a scenario where he keeps his job. The report also names two former Dolphins executives, Jeff Ireland, the former general manager, Brian Gaine, the former assistant general manager, saying that each took Richie Incognito aside and asked him to take responsibility for making Martin physically tougher and stronger. Now, that's a different deal than what the behavior that actually took place. And then it goes on to say that head coach Joe Philbin was not aware of the mistreatment of Martin. So is the head coach going to get a pass here?
Well, at a certain point you become Mr. Magoo if you're not aware of what's happening on your watch. Former Dolphins coach Don Shula said not that long ago, back when he was coaching, he made sure his assistant coaches were paying attention to the locker room, that they knew their guys, they knew what was happening. If there were any problems, let's head them off. So at a minimum, there's going to be some justifiable criticism of Joe Philbin for not knowing what was happening until it was too late, until the moment Jonathan Martin threw down the tray of food and stormed out of the facility, and this process became something that the public is now fully and completely able to consume. Just the fact that this happened, you get to this result. Even if it wasn't intended, even if it wasn't nefarious or malicious, the fact that we got to this point, there's responsibility for the man who's in charge of that team. And the question is, what does that mean? I mean, you're not going to fire Joe Philbin in the middle of February and hire a new head coach. I'd be shocked if that happens. But I think this is going to stick to him, and it's going to require him to have a better season in 2014 than maybe he otherwise would have had to have in order to stick around for another year.
Mike, I always think it's sort of dangerous to wade into, big, important significant, I should say, predictions in the wake of news just dropping. So I don't ask this question lightly. It's easy to pile on. We're still a lot of reactions and recriminations to this. But based on your instincts, you think Richie Incognito's through in the National Football League?
This is all coming out for him in the worst possible week that it could, with Michael Sam coming out as gay just days before this report comes out. I think Richie Incognito is going to end up being viewed as radioactive. There's a text message exchange that we posted about a little while ago between Incognito and Dolphin center Mike Pouncey, which really gives you an idea about what this guy's character really is. They were talking about retaliating against Jonathan Martin. He's not welcome here. He's ratting on us. He's a snitch. Snitches get stitches. I think it's going to be hard for any team to welcome Incognito into their organization at a time when there's questions about whether or not a team would welcome Michael Sam into their organization. Between what he did Wednesday in disclosing that Martin had mentioned last May that he was contemplating suicide on Twitter, which is reprehensible when you think about it, to what's in this report, I don't know how you justify giving Richie Incognito a job in the NFL.
I mean, you want to talk about baggage. I mean, to the extent – I agree with you, Mike. And as I said, I think we all understand that a locker room is not a tea party. I mean, there's going to be a lot of things said in a locker room that are not going to be said in other pockets of society. And, I think we can all understand that and have a tolerance for that. So, to the degree, but that's not just a broad brush that can excuse any type of behavior. So the degree that drags the locker room into a more modern time and more mature time, frankly, I think that can be a good thing. I mean, you mentioned about Incognito taking to Twitter 2 days ago. I can't believe he had any idea that this report was going to contain the information that it did. If he had any inkling that it was this bad and he still took to Twitter, that would just really be beyond the pale, even by his standards. You have any idea if he knew if this was coming or what he was trying to accomplish or what happened when he went on Twitter?
Hey, Seth, you raise a great point because he's demanding his exoneration 2 days ago. His favorite hashtag, free incognito. He's upset because the report clearing him hasn't been issued. Did he not know that his text messages to Mike Pouncey were going to be given to Ted Wells? Did he not realize what that would mean? You may have a level of ignorance here that is troubling and far more revealing than anyone would intend. This guy just doesn't get it. And he probably never will get it. I've been checking his Twitter page every so often this morning to see when the next eruption from Mount Incognito is going to come. Apparently they call him the tornado when he turns into this alternative personality where he's ultra-aggressive and loud as opposed to when he's just normally aggressive and loud. But the guy just doesn't get it, and I don't think he ever will.
The juxtaposition of Michael Sam with this report a couple of days, you can't make this up. And it's ugly. It's unpleasant. It's uncomfortable reading. But you know what? In the end, I think a lot of good is going to come with this. I think we need to have this conversation. I think teams and players need to have this conversation. Just because you're in a locker room and just because you got pads on and a helmet on does not mean you can say or do anything that you want. And, I think to the degree that this makes all of us accountable, whether it's writers, players, coaches, trainers, what have you, that can be a good thing. So, hey, Mike, thanks for covering it for us. I know we called you on short notice, but you did a great job breaking it down, and thanks for the insights.
All right, Seth. Take care, buddy.
All right, everybody. That was Mike Florio from ProFootballTalk.com.